What happens when your ex's parents or the whole family decide to get involved in your divorce or de facto separation? Are they texting you, pressuring you, taking sides, making demands, or even trying to negotiate on your ex's behalf? If you're dealing with in-laws who won't back off, grandparents who suddenly won't write, family members making false claims about money, or people spreading misinformation with your kids, then today's episode is going to be perfect for you. Today, we're going to be talking about what you actually have to respond to. Now, this is not legal advice. It's going to be general education. We're based in Australia. It may be different in your country, but the dynamics are going to be there, and we're going to be talking about them today. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone. That's a lot to talk about.
I know, you freaked out when I was like, why don't we talk about this, Mum? You're like, whoa, that's a lot. So look, and we are going to do a grandparents top episode all on its own for those of you who are listening who are grandparents who genuinely want to spend time with your grandchildren and what your rights are. But we're not going to go into the nitty-gritty of that today. We're going from the angle of the listener today being pestered by the grandparents, being harassed or trying to basically get involved in the divorce or property settlement and kids. But before we get started, Mum is not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. And even though these dynamics do exist all over the world, this will be relevant to Australia, and maybe just the emotional side will be relevant to the other countries. So let's get into the jingle and let's get started.
Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
All right, Mum, one of the first things you say that happens is you go and tell your family. You go and you say, getting a divorce or we're getting separated. That happens. And families, what do they say? Blood is thicker than water, all these things that they say, and it can be really hurtful. And do you see the family dynamic change pretty quickly in divorce?
Yes. And I've been through it, and I have a great relationship with my ex-in-laws. But everyone seems to have a position, I think, that grandparents want their child to be in a happy relationship. They want their grandchildren to be the children of an intact relationship. And so it's disappointing for them in one way, and sometimes even a neutral response from your parents. Oh, well, we're not going to take sides. She can come here whenever she wants. Can feel like a bit of a slap in the face because you want blood to be thicker than water.
Yeah.
At other times, your manipulative and controlling ex, one of their tactics out of the narcissist playbook that we've got is they ring your parents first. You might agree that you're not going to discuss it with anyone until only to find out they've got there first. So by the time you get there, your parents or in-laws have already heard all this awful stuff about you, and everything you say sounds such a feeble denial. And particularly, Laura, if during the relationship you kept your issues and problems in the marriage from the extended family. So they are often quite blindsided by this, and sometimes they don't behave as well as we would expect them to.
And look, we do hear about this a lot where, particularly if it's manipulative and controlling, like you said, narcissists, they race straight to your parents, but they also race to all the family, and they use the family as their flying monkeys. Or they use their family as a way to coerce you and intimidate you in other ways. And I guess as a mother, if someone came to me and said, your daughter, because I don't have boys, but your daughter has been coercively controlling towards me, and, if they'd said something like that, it would be really hard to get my head around and think, surely my child wouldn't do such a thing, And
can I say, completely unbiased as their grandparent,
no,
your children are perfect.
But that's the problem. So when something like this happens, particularly in DV, it can be really hard for the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law to see their in-laws react in a protective way or a denial way and not validate what you've experienced. Even if it's been physical and there's proof, it can be quite shocking to not gain support from that. But I guess that's that whole blood blood is thicker than water. Doesn't always happen, but it is something that can happen. So we're going to be talking about this today because I see, and I know we talk a lot about manipulative controlling, but in this coercive controlling situation, the grandparents, or even if you don't have children, the parents get roped in a way to put the pressure on you and to make it even more emotionally horrible for you to go through. But even if you've got avoidant as well, this can happen. And we're going to talk about some different scenarios. But let's get started with one of the things that happens the most, whether you've got DV or not, that the parents start negotiating on their behalf. You know, you might start getting text messages or emails from their parents saying, come on, why don't you just be fair and just let such and such do this? Or why don't you just be reasonable? Or we think you should, or we expect you to, or he or she deserves.
Or we're so disappointed that you didn't.
Yes. So number one, why is this happening? And number two, do they have to answer?
Okay, I think it's happening. It's just human nature. Okay, we step in to help our children. We want to help our children. I think that's why it happens. No, you don't need to respond. What we don't highlight enough is while the grandparents are going through all this and the children are going through all this, and we're focusing on the best interests of the children and the grandparents, what about you? If your marriage has ended, or relationship ended, even if you did the ending, it's devastating. It's a lot to understand. And having to respond to your ex's family or even members of your family who've been recruited is exhausting. So, no, you don't have to respond. Stay off social media and just sort of try and get yourself together.
So, does it look bad if you ever went to court, if someone's written you some big, long, heartfelt message and you just don't respond?
No.
Does it look bad if you do respond, but you write some horrible things like, you're horrible, someone did X, Y, Z, and it was blah, 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 blah. Can that be bad?
Yeah, that can be.
Is it sometimes better to not respond at all?
I think an emoji or wow, it tells a lot. At least.
So I guess really in this instance, you've got to think, are you amicable? Are you in a manipulative controlling? So if you're an amicable, you could just say, hey, look, I'm only going to negotiate with your son or daughter. I'm not going to negotiate with you. Or can you please use the proper communication channels if you've got lawyers? Like that's something you could write.
You could do that. You could do the Hollywood. We are consciously uncoupling and we would ask you to respect our privacy at this difficult time.
All right.
What's wrong with that?
Okay.
You know?
So because we do get questions a lot, Mum, and people are stressing out about it going, look, I don't know if I'm supposed to be answering because they are grandparents. They do have some rights. Is it bad for me to not answer? So is it bad to not answer if it's about children?
Not usually. If it's in those early stages and the court doesn't make arrangements for grandchildren to see their grandparents, usually, unless they are not seeing the parent whose grandparents they are. So otherwise, when the kids are with you, you're supposed to make sure they spend time with their extended family, including grandparents. And when the kids are with your ex, they should make sure that the kids spend time with their grandparents on that side. The court long ago has stopped trying to divide up everything so everyone gets what they call a fair go. So it's not a problem if you don't answer, or you can just be like, here's the thing, you might not have any beef with their family, okay? But just be careful.
I think that's important because social media and text messages, they may write to you and say, and I hate saying this, but it's true. I know, people say, I'm going to say neutral. I'm not going to get involved for the sake of the kid. But then the minute they find out some information, they straight away go to their actual child and say, I've just found out this information, or I've just seen on social media they've done this. So you really do have to, look, if I could offer my 2 cents worth, I would maybe either stay off social media and just say, hey, I'm not willing to talk at this moment. I need some time. Doesn't mean you're blocking them forever because you may have to communicate with these people in the future. But, sisters-in-law that you might have been besties with or brothers-in-laws, it can be really hard. You can just say, hey, I just need some time for now.
Yes.
And then, if that gets abusive, then block. You can block.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
And another reason to not get into it with your ex's family in the early stages is you don't want to deprive them of their moral support through this stage. If you say to their parents, this is what happened, she did this, and this, and they believe you, then you've got a very distressed parent, of a child who doesn't have the 100% support of their parent.
I don't care. If they've done the wrong thing, I do not care. I do not care.
You will care. You will care if you're going through negotiations and you need them to listen to someone who's wiser and
True. I don't think you hide the facts from it, but I don't think at this point in your stages that you're going through, whether you're in court, whether you're just separated, or whether you're going through negotiations, I don't think talking to his family or her family is going to help you moving forwards in any way. Now, Mum,
no.
What about in terms of domestic violence? If someone's got a protection order, say, I don't know, Sally and her ex is David. Are David's parents allowed to contact Sally?
It's a grey area because the family violence orders will almost always say that a person is not allowed to use someone else to contact you on their behalf.
Okay.
And so it's a grey area for you. You might say, hang on, you're contacting me on that person's behalf. That person, therefore, is in breach of the orders. And they might say, no, we were going to call you anyway. So it's a bit of a grey area, but use the family violence order that you've got to put up a little shield around you.
Okay. So can you add them to the protection order if they're like a brother or the sister-in-law or the...
No, you can add an aggrieved person. You can add, say, a member of your family who might have been part of the family violence dynamic and was a victim. But you can't just make orders about random people, to leave you alone.
So I think it's also important to point out that sometimes this third-party contact, it actually can become part of the coercive control. If you're in a coercive controlling dynamic and you cut off your ex and you're trying to get away from that, and then these people become involved, that it can actually be part of the coercive control. So make sure you're getting the proper support from psychologists and DV specialists, and call 1-800-RESPECT. So that they can guide you, because just because they're out of the picture, they're going to try every possible way to get back into the picture they can, and using families, sister-in-law, brothers.
And your families, they'll use your family to try to contact you. And if they recruit them to being their allies, you are losing your supporters.
So is there any point in documenting this unwanted communication? Or
look, keep a letter, keep a copy of the text, keep a copy of the letter. It's not much point saying how many times they phoned you.
Yeah.
But if you can screenshot your screen, you can just keep that up your sleeve, or in your back pocket. It's probably a better way of putting it. Yeah, unless you need it later on.
Okay.
But you've got enough to deal with. If you're in these early stages, you've got enough to deal with.
And if you are, I think it's important to note here, and of course, if you're triggered, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline. But if you are dealing with that, don't be sharing your safety plans with them, Don't have a safety plan. And we've got an episode guiding you through how to create a safety plan, but please be mindful of that. Now, next one, another scenario that we hear.
Mm-hmm.
You got married, you've lived a little bit, you want to buy a house, housing crisis, nightmare. The family says, his parents or her parents say, hey, we'll give you $100,000 towards your house. Here you go. And you say, thanks, you buy your house, and then you're getting separated. And all of a sudden they say 5 years later, you owe us $50,000 or you owe us $100. So there's this money giving back thing that can happen.
Yeah.
You see it a lot where they say, oh my goodness, my mother-in-law just said I owe her $100,000 and I have no idea. So what's this thing about gifts and loans, and what does it mean?
So as you can imagine, that's cropped up a lot, not just during the current housing crisis, but over the last few decades. It has cropped up a lot to the point that the court has developed a way of dealing with it.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. And that means your lawyer can usually advise you if it's an issue or not.
Okay.
So what the court says is, unless it is documented in a way it would be like to a stranger, and usually there's been repayments and probably interest on it and reflected in a mortgage, in that Biltop's case, unless there is that sort of documentation, the court's thinking, you know what, we're going to say that's a contribution on behalf of the person whose parents gave the money. Because what they worried about was that they would add it in as a debt of the parties, like $100,000 off the top, divide the property, and pay the parents back. And then as soon as the case is over, the parents give their child the money back. Mm. So it's either a contribution on your behalf, which gives you a bigger share of the remaining property, or if you can prove it in Biltop's case, then it's a debt.
So imagine this is the parents coming to your in-laws coming to you and saying, you owe us. So if they're saying you owe us, is it a debt on your behalf or is it a contribution on your ex's behalf?
It depends how it's characterised. If it satisfies the test in Biltop's case, then it might be a debt of the parties. If it doesn't, then it's a contribution on your ex's behalf. But remember this, the contribution on behalf of your spouse only gives them a bigger share of the remaining property.
What evidence do they need to prove that it was a loan and not a gift?
I have to say, sometimes you don't even know your ex has got money from their parents. They keep that quiet. And sometimes people get a heck of a shock when there's this debt. So what documentation do you need? Like I said, following Biltop's case, the court will look at whether it was documented and signed properly. And I've seen ones, I'm sure, that have been cooked up and signed retrospectively. They look at whether there was a mortgage. They look at whether there's repayments made or whether there's interest being paid on this. Mm-hmm. And see, the court, they might look at it as a debt, right? So let's keep with our $100,000. But what they say is, the cases are saying, you have to look at that $100,000 and consider its character, the likelihood of it having to be repaid now or in the future, the likelihood of it being given straight back to the person after the family court proceedings are over. And so they'll often kind of discount that debt and explore the nature of it. One of the tests is, did that parent give the other siblings the same amount of money at the same time? Because then it wasn't a loan, So there are all sorts of things you can look at. So the court's very reluctant to go, yep, that's a debt, $60,000 or $100,000 straight to her parents or his parents. And because we all know if they've given it to them once, they could give it to them again.
So what kind of things can people say if they've got their in-laws pressuring them saying, well, in the mediation, I want to be involved because you owe me $100,000. What kind of things can people say about?
Yeah, well, this is a family court case, and these pre-action procedures are between parties to a de facto relationship or to a marriage. So, they're just not there.
Okay.
Their child can promote their side of the story if they're fair dinkum about it. Then when the family court proceedings come on, they can ask to be joined as parties, or they may be able to go to other courts. But usually it's a distraction, and the family court deals with things differently.
What kind of things can they say if the ex is saying in mediation, you owe my parents $100,000?
Yeah, well, that remains to be seen, doesn't it? I'm happy to negotiate on the basis that your parents contributed $100,000 years ago, but you're unlikely to have to pay that back. We haven't made any payments, usually those sort of things. So it's a factor, right? It's a factor. It might increase depending on a property pool of, say, $2 million. Okay, it's not going to shift the needle much from 50-50 because every percent's $200,000. And so every it's a 0.5% thing.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on from that. Let's move on from property. What about when grandparents are demanding to see the kids when your ex isn't seeing them at all?
Yes. So sometimes you might think that's a good thing for the children. The best interests of the children are paramount. Sometimes, though, if there's a reason why your ex can't see the children, having the children go to their parents' place may be an opportunity for them to come close to the children, perhaps because they are the parent, not the grandparents, they might be able to take the children away. All of those things which might not be, they can't really be stopped by the grandparents. And the harm, if there's harm that can happen, it happens that way. So the key is, I guess, to think about, okay, if if my ex is estranged from their parents, but my children are used to seeing these parents and they're good grandparents, then you can set your own arrangements up for them as well as for your ex.
But if they're not, if they haven't really had much of a relationship with them.
Yeah.
So it's up to you. So really you've got to weigh up your children's needs for stability, whether or not having contact with them is going to support parenting or is it going to undermine it? They're going to say horrible things about you. Is it appropriate? Is it safe? There's all these questions you need to ask, but there's no, I think the message we just want to get across is no hard and fast rule for this. There's no black and white, I have rights and you must do as I say kind of thing. This is all based on your child's best interest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, if you've got doubts, then that would probably be a no from me.
If you've got doubts about whether it's appropriate for the kids to see.
Whether it's safe for the kids or not, I probably would be thinking about saying no. If they don't believe that their child has done anything wrong, they often get put forward as supervisors for the time that their child spends with the grandchild. But if they don't believe anything happened, they seldom are vigilant enough to protect the children. You could ask for undertakings from them, but they're not enforceable because the grandparents aren't part of the proceedings. What I like to think is this: until you can get your legal advice, it's not going to be the end of the world for anybody if they haven't seen the children for 5 or 6 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks. If that's the time you need to nut it out, then especially like the other parent, that's an eternity. Yeah. They might need to be seeing the children a lot earlier in the absence of any disentitling factors. But the grandparents can just wait. Okay. And usually grandparents see the kids during their child's time with the
so let's just clarify that. If there isn't any unsafeness, the grandparents shouldn't be trying to negotiate time with you, with the kids. They're meant to be looking and meeting the kids and seeing the kids when they're with their own child. Mm-hmm. So that's not your responsibility, because we do hear that sometimes, that the grandparents are trying to negotiate their own time on top of their ex trying to negotiate time, and then they're dealing with 2 different people and it's doing their heads in.
Well, it also is a bit of a sneaky trick too, because the grandparents get some time, say that was 1/3 of the time. Their child gets 1/3 of the time with the grandchildren. You only end up with 1/3 of the time. So sometimes it's a strategy to minimise the amount of time that the children spend with you. So just watch that. And the grandparents, just at this early stage when everyone's finding their feet, unless they've been a daily positive influence on the children, could probably go on the back burner for a month or 2 while you sort yourself out.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Another thing that happens that people have to deal with is the family members not putting pressure on you, but putting pressure on your kid.
If you're separated or about to be and you need to get everything finalised and sorted but you don't know what to do next, or you're looking for a way to do your own divorce and settlement without spending thousands of dollars on lawyer, then you already know what you need to do, and that is to sign up and become a member of the DIY Divorce Blueprint. Empower, educate and equip yourself with the legal know-how and the tools you need to get divorced or de facto separated and finally settle. Work through this course at your own pace without feeling confused, lost, scared or overwhelmed of all the family law legal jargon and processes. Let us walk with you through this journey and show you.
All right, moving on. Another thing that happens that people have to deal with is the family members not putting pressure on you, but putting pressure on your kid. So particularly in the midst of nasty court battles, there's this potential emotional harm, psychological manipulation, what do you say to the kids? And is this a family court issue? Because if you're currently, I've heard of a horror story where the children were about to go to a family where they see a family report writer who determines from the children what they think and how they feel and how the dynamic of the family is. And the grandparents got wind of the family report. And so they bought them these big baskets of toys and gifts and lollies and, made a big deal out of it, and then just spent the whole time while the kids are doing all of that, bad-mouthing the other parent. So this can, I think, be really horrible. But what can you do about it?
You hope that the parents of the child would stop their parents doing the wrong thing or trying to manipulate. Family report writers are pretty clued up as to these sorts of strategies. And of course, if the other person knew that their ex's parents were doing this with the children, giving them stuff, they can give the family report writer a heads up about it and they can ask the children about it.
Okay.
When parents, normally the orders restraining people from talking about these proceedings with the children or in the hearing of or in, of the children, the order can say, or the undertaking can say, and they will remove the children from the earshot or of anyone who is denigrating the other parent and their family. So they can't make an order on the parents unless the parents are litigants, but they can put the risk, unless the parents are part of the court proceedings. So what they do is they put the onus on the other parent to make sure the children aren't emotionally harmed, because people sit around a kitchen table, and especially if court's coming up, and they think the kids aren't around and they start rubbishing at them. The kids pick it, and there was an old saying when I was a child that was called little pigs have big ears. And that meant the kids notice, they hear it. So you've got to tone that down, and it's not healthy for you either.
Now, we've got a great episode called Trash Talking and what you can do about it. And Mum's written some scripts on what you can say to your ex if you are dealing with that, because the onus is on them to protect their children from anybody talking trash about either parent. So go and listen to that episode if you're dealing with that. Now, we've got a little bit more time, so I want to ask you a couple other ones. Now,
okay, fire away.
This is less legal, but more, I think I see this happening. This dynamic is happening.
Okay.
Particularly if someone's got an avoidant ex or an amicable ex. It's the grandparents or the parents that are putting extra pressure on your ex to fight harder, to fight for more time, more money, more conflict, and sometimes they may agree in mediation, go away, have dinner with the family, tell them what they've agreed to, and then they get yelled at or told that's ridiculous, and then they all of a sudden have changed their mind. So do you see this happening, and how can people stop it?
I do see it happening a lot, and I also see it if either person gets a new partner. But if you get a new partner in your ear, for some reason, some new partners set up a rivalry with the other person, so they don't want any concessions made to the ex because they feel insecure. So how do you fix that? I think if you know that someone's going to be in your corner and hard to convince, then if it's you, take them with you to the mediation. So they're in there, they can go on that journey with you. For your ex, if they've got really powerful, people, and they want to bring one of them as a support person, I'd say yes.
Yeah.
Because if they are beholden or they are going to respond to someone getting in their ear when they leave the mediation, then you aren't speaking to the real power behind their decisions. You're only speaking to the messenger. So you need to get that person in to the room so they might be hard, they might be anti everything, but they will, once they go through the process, the agreement will probably stick.
Okay.
If they go through. Or the other thing is, as a mediator, I used to say to people, no one has to know what you decided here today.
Yes.
It's none of their business.
Well, let's
just go home and leave it at that.
Let's talk about that. That's the flip side. Yeah. It's when it's the family pressure is on you. And look, I'm not going to say you did badly, Mum, but I wasn't going to walk out of that mediation agreeing to something that wasn't fair.
I wasn't.
No,
fair.
I know, but I would have hated to go up to you and go, oh, I've agreed to no time with the children, or something like that. Like you would be like, you what? And you didn't do that or anything like that. But and I definitely didn't agree to no time with the children. But guilt trips and trying to shame you or blame you, or sometimes. If people have been through family violence, you've got friends or family or, your older brother or something, where they're so mad at what you have been put through, they are additionally mad if you come out of your property settlement or children's matter with not as what they would think is fair.
Absolutely. The difference between them and me with you, though, was I'm a lawyer.
Yes. That's right.
But these people are indignant on your behalf. They're protective. they are upset and angry, and they've, what you say is, look, I've got just enough strength and energy, and you could say this to me, to get me through this, to get the kids through this. You're going to have to work through your own emotions. I love you, but.
I love you, but. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I love you,
So
but.
some healthy boundaries when it comes to your own family, I think, is really important, and definitely healthy boundaries when it comes to their family. So we have a great episode called 10 Boundaries for a Healthy Divorce.
Oh, yes.
Really go listen to that if you haven't got those boundaries set up, because it can make a big difference for you in these decision-making phases. Now, Mum, what can you control versus what can't you control?
Yes.
So let's just talk about these and then you can help.
Okay.
You don't have to manage anyone else's emotions. Like you just said, you've only got enough energy to get yourself through it, not your ex's,
and your
not
kids.
your in-laws, not your mum, not your dad, not your other families, okay?
Yeah.
It's not your job to educate anybody, okay?
No.
So you're educating yourself. It's not your job to educate. If they can't get their head around why property settlement doesn't seem fair to them, send them a podcast. They can go listen to it. They can figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
And you don't have to respond to everything these people write. In fact, you don't have to respond at all, can you, Mum?
Do you know, I think you could say to them, look, you had to be there.
Yeah.
You had to be there. I had my advice and I'm happy with the process and now I can move on.
So you can't control their emotions. You can't control their understanding, okay? And you can't control what they're going to write to you. But you can control your boundaries, like we just said, set some boundaries up. But you could say, I'm only going to talk about this with your family or your in-laws on Thursdays. I'm not talking about it every single time I see you.
Do you know why it gets a blurry boundary, okay, is when you are relying on your family or their family or your friends to support you, through your sobbing and when things go wrong, it seems really hard to say to them after a mediation, oh, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
And some friends, and I don't think you had any friends like this, Laura, but some people, it's a transactional thing. They support you and help you, but in return, they want all the info and they want an input into how it turns out. So it does help filter out true friends from other friends. And you can say to them, look, I say this with love and I value and support. I value very much your support, but this was a legal decision. I've taken it with the advice of my lawyers and I don't want to discuss it.
That's right. You can control those boundaries. It's really important.
Yep.
Document if your ex is trying to coercively control you through your in-laws or other family members. Document it. It may come in handy in court to prove that coercive control. Think about your safety. You can control some of your safety, so make sure you've got a safety plan. And you can set up communication channels. You can say, I'm not going to be negotiating with your mother via text about children's matters. No. You can send me a letter via email, or you can get your lawyer to communicate with me, or whatever it is. That's your boundary.
Yes.
That's right. That's what will help, right?
Yeah. You can see there could be a gathering of like 3 or 4 people from the other side otherwise bombarding you. And you're trying to keep yourself together. If there's kids, you've also got to keep yourself together for the children's sake. If you're working, you've still got to keep yourself together. And when it's an unfair thing with many against one, it's just not fair.
Yeah. When it becomes a legal issue, Mum, that's basically if they start harassing you, then you can go and talk to the police.
Yeah, each state's different, but there are things like peace and good behaviour bonds. You can get a family violence order up against a relative in most states, but if you've got one against your ex, that doesn't automatically include his family, right? Especially if he or she's not telling the family to say these things.
Okay.
So yes, consider it, but normally just threatening to do so is enough. I mean, afterwards, think about this. You're probably going to have to go to your children's 21st birthdays, their weddings. Yep. So you don't want to really ruin the ability of both of you to be in the same room at the same time if you possibly can.
So really, I think when it comes to it, guys, if you're listening today and you are dealing with this, we are giving you permission to protect yourself.
Yes.
Give yourself that peace. Put up those boundaries. You don't have to deal with all their crap. Your responsibility is your kids. Your responsibility, if you don't have kids, it's you as well. Your responsibility is not your ex's parents.
No. And if you answer the first couple of inquiries, which people often get trapped to, right, and they begin a dialogue and then they stop it, then you have the grandparents being quite indignant and the other family members being quite cross with you. So that's a boundary you can put in really early on.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to note as well, look, if you've got a manipulative, controlling or a high conflict ex, they may come from a tree of manipulative, controlling people, or that gets a generational dysfunction. That's not your issue to fix either. Okay? So
that's right.
If they're having fights and they're trying to involve you in their fights, you don't need to get involved.
That's exactly
We want you to
right.
stay focused on what you can control. We want you to stay focused on your kids, on you, your property settlement, your children's issues, and negotiating with your ex or their lawyer. That's all you need to be focused on.
Absolutely.
Mum, have you got anything that you would want to embroider on a cushion for this?
It's not about them. This is not about them.
Yeah. So if you are listening today, please take this as your permission to just remove that thing out of your life for now. Yes. You can deal with that later, but you don't need that in your life, right? So hopefully some of this information has given you a little bit more confidence to stand up and give yourself a bit more of a shield against this nasty. And we wish you and your children, if you've got kids, the best moving forward. So every month, pretty much, we read a review from someone from Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. And that lucky person gets a free call with Mum, which is awesome. And so today's lovely message that we've received, 5-star review from Zod17 in Australia. And they write, this should be mandatory listening when going through divorce. Absolutely invaluable advice. Now we don't advice, we give tips. The knowledge that Laura and Lynn share is just incredible. I have learned so much that has helped towards getting close to the end with a coercive, controlling husband. Highly recommend this show to anyone either going through separation or thinking about it. A very big thank you for taking the time to make this podcast to grow others. I will be spending my 30th wedding anniversary listening to the Divorce Course podcast webinar live next week. Looking forward to it. So big hugs to you guys. I know we've just had our webinar. I'm not sure whether this will come out before or after the doors close to the Divorce Course Blueprint. It is open until the 25th of February. We'll be closing the doors at midnight. So if you would like to join the course and come along and see us on the Q&As weekly, we'd love you to join. If you've missed it, we'll have a wait list, so you can sign up to the wait list. And you just go to thedivorcecourse.com.au/enroll. And you'll either be able to join or put your name down on the wait list. Thank you, Mum, for your time.
No worries, Laura. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the reviews that you write and the sharing on YouTube. It's great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Laura.
I'm glad we could help you on your 30th wedding anniversary there.
Yes. Oh, dear.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye. Bye, Laura. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.